Hi there, happy Thursday. So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about building blocks of a brand and what it means to DIY your digital empire. So the building blocks of a brand are the fundamental things that make up you. A lot of times at an agency especially, we'll talk about content buckets. So it's the buckets, because they're, like open and they can hold a lot. Think of it like a sandbox bucket. So you can hold a lot of information in a bucket. Boxes are less flexible, I think. So when I explain this to clients or when I explain it to friends, I say, think of the buckets that you want to use for the things you want to talk about. So my buckets, to give you an example, are like New York City living, so SoulCycle, being a millennial in New York, building, being a millennial entrepreneur is another bucket, digital media, obviously, and then just like positive tips to help you move forward. That's kind of part of my like millennial entrepreneur platform, but that's my blog platform. So I think that helps me, and it should help you, because once you have 4 or 5 content buckets, then you know what you need to create when you're sitting down to create content. Part of that should be something that's personal about you. Maybe it's something like, I've always been into DIY, and for a while I was working with the Snug, and that was another like great outlet for me to do some more DIY stuff. But I've always been into DIY. From the very first day that I started my internship at This Old House, I was so excited to learn more about all the things that I wanted to fit together. DIY most people think of as home improvement, of course, but then I started to think of myself as a DIYer in general. When I started working, it was a very interesting time for journalism, especially, and editorial brands, because everyone was confused, nobody knew it was gonna work, everybody was afraid of the internet, and I have never been afraid. I mean, granted, I do have fears, just like everybody else, because I am human. I am super afraid of raccoons, but that's a story for another day. And, but when it came to the internet, I wasn't afraid, because when I was 3 years old, my mom taught computers at St. John's University, and I remember like tinkering with the computer, and back in the day when it was like you had to use commands on the blue screen. I don't know if anybody else remembers that, but it was a great experience for me because it taught me that these machines are powerful and that, they're powerful but safe to use. So I think that a lot of times when people think of social media, they get a little bit apprehensive, especially when they're sharing personal information, because building a good brand requires a building block that opens up the doors to the behind the scenes of your life and your brand. But you don't have to be. Powerful tools can be harnessed to help you DIY your digital empire, and that's why I'm taking time to really explain the important tools that you need to know. So what's the moral of today's story? Figure out what your building blocks are and don't be afraid to experiment. That's how I DIY'd my digital empire, and that's how I DIY digital empires for brands that I worked for. It's how I hacked my way to the top. Hack has kind of a negative connotation online, but it doesn't have to be. Again, really what it means is thinking of an alternative definition or looking at the other side of something when it comes to creating content, creating your brands. I tend to look at everything from the other side. So one last little tip, TBT, for example. TBT does not have to be a grainy photo of you from 30 years ago. It could be a throwback to an old blog post. It could be a throwback to a really popular story on your blog or your website. It could be a throwback to a really popular Instagram photo or a Facebook post. Throwback Thursday just means it happened before that date. So it does not have to be an old grainy photo that you stole from your mother at Christmas time. It can be, or that you stole from your parents at Christmas time. It can be a great piece of content that did really well for you that you want to resurface. So think about that the next time that you're getting ready to TBT, and just think about it in general. Everything has another side. Every single thing in this world has 2 ways to look at it. It's not black and white. It most certainly is gray, or grayish, as I like to say. So think about that when you're creating content and also when you're sharing. I hope that helps you today. And if you have any comments, leave them if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Talk to you soon. Bye.